No, he was a cold and skeptical tycoon, the owner of a financial empire who believed all women were gold diggers. She was a young woman, pure and virginal at heart, with an aura of innocence that made her seem old-fashioned. On a busy day in the luxurious corporate building, Haley trips and falls directly into the arms of Gabriel. The impact is immediate. As he holds her, he perceives the lack of malice, the authentic vulnerability, and the absolute purity in her eyes. Shocked by this rare innocence, and in an irrational impulse, he releases her and, to her utter disbelief, proposes to her right then and there, "Marry me." Watch this story to the end. You'll be surprised by this story. If you like stories of love, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. Every day we post videos like this. Continuing. See, Haley Smith's breakfast consisted of a bagel with cream cheese and strong black coffee, prepared in the tiny kitchen of the two-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother and younger brother. In Chinatown, at 24, she woke up every morning at 5:30 to study before going to work, taking advantage of the only quiet hours the house offered. Accounting books scattered across the kitchen table were her constant companions, along with overdue bills that she carefully organized in order of priority. "Honey, you don't have to carry the world on your shoulders," said Mrs. Lee every morning, watching her daughter review the family budget numbers for the 10th time. Haley just smiled, kissed her mother's forehead, and headed to the bus stop. Her job as a receptionist at the Rockefeller Center corporate building in the heart of Manhattan paid enough to keep the family afloat, but never enough for breaks or luxuries. The building where she worked was a world apart, 70 floors of glass and steel that housed some of the largest companies in the country. Haley spent her days on the ground floor, greeting visitors, directing executives, and observing a universe to which she would never belong. She always wore the same 3 blouses, carefully ironed, and the black skirt she had bought on sale 2 years ago. Her brown hair was styled in a simple bun, and she avoided makeup beyond a touch of lipstick. 70 floors above, Gabriel Mendonça adjusted the knot of his Italian silk navy tie in the reflection of his office's panoramic window. At 37, he headed Mendonça Holdings, a financial empire that moved billions and had tentacles across the continent. His suits were custom-made in London, his watches cost more than most people earned in a year, and his personal life was as controlled as his investments. "Mr. Mendonça, the meeting with the Japanese delegation has been rescheduled for 3 p.m., informed Marcia, his executive assistant, an efficient woman of 50 who knew exactly how to keep Gabriel's world running without interfering in his carefully constructed isolation. Gabriel nodded without looking up from the reports. He had learned long ago that keeping distance was the only way to avoid disappointment. Women appeared in his life like high-risk investments, seductive promises that inevitably revealed hidden interests in his fortune or status. The last had been Veronica, a socialite whom he discovered photographing confidential documents from his desk. Since then, 3 years had passed without any woman managing to cross the barriers he had erected around his heart. That Tuesday in March, Haley was carrying a particularly high stack of files that needed to be archived on the 22nd floor. The elevator was more crowded than usual, and she balanced on her low heels, trying not to let the papers slip. Her shift was almost over, and she had promised her brother that she would help him with his math homework that night. Gabriel was coming out of a tense meeting about overseas acquisitions. The numbers hadn't closed as expected, and he felt that familiar tension between his shoulders that accompanied him in the most complex deals. He walked with long strides towards the elevator, checking messages on his phone, when the door opened on the 22nd floor. It was a moment that would last forever in both of their memories. Haley, trying to get out of the elevator overloaded with papers, didn't see Gabriel approaching. He, absorbed in his phone screen, didn't notice the young woman until it was too late. The impact was inevitable. The papers flew through the air like confetti, and Haley lost her balance completely. By instinct, Gabriel dropped his phone and stretched out his arms, holding her before she fell. For an eternal moment she hung suspended in his arms, her face flushed with embarrassment, inches from his. Hayley's brown eyes met his, grey and intense, and something passed between them that neither of them could name. Gabriel felt as if time had stopped. Her fragility in his arms, the genuine embarrassment in her gaze, the total absence of calculation or seduction. She wasn't trying to impress him or get his attention. It was pure authenticity, an innocence he had forgotten existed. I'm so sorry, sir," Hayley murmured, trying to regain her composure as he helped her to her feet. "The papers. I need—" She bent down frantically to gather the documents scattered across the marble floor. Gabriel remained motionless, watching her. There was something about this woman that struck him like lightning. The way she moved, the genuine concern for the papers, the way she avoided his gaze out of shyness, not strategy. In his 37 years, surrounded by women who measured every gesture and word, he had never met anyone so transparently real. When Hayley finally mustered the courage to look up again, she found Gabriel still standing in the same place, studying her with an intensity that made her blush even more. And then, to the surprise of both and anyone who might have been watching, the words came out of his mouth before his rational mind could intervene. "Marry me." The silence that followed was deafening. Hayley froze, the last papers still in her hands, trembling like leaves in the wind. For a moment, she thought she had misheard, that the impact of the fall had affected her hearing, but Gabriel's grey eyes remained fixed on hers, awaiting an answer to the most absurd question she had ever been asked. "Sorry, What did you say?" Her voice came out almost as a whisper, and she could feel the blood rushing to her cheeks again. "Marry me," Gabriel repeated, this time with more firmness, as if repetition could make the request less insane. He himself couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth, but there was something about this woman that completely disarmed his rational defenses. "Sir, I don't even know who you are," Hayley stammered, taking a step back. Her heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. This is insane. Gabriel Mendonça," he introduced himself automatically, extending his hand as if they were in a business meeting, and not in the middle of the hallway after a completely out-of-context marriage proposal. "And you're right, it's insane, but I've never been more serious in my entire life." Hayley looked at the outstretched hand as if it were a venomous snake. Gabriel Mendonça. The name echoed in her mind. She had seen that name in the business magazines she sometimes leafed through at the reception desk, always accompanied by headlines like "The King of Mergers" or "The Country's Youngest Billionaire." And there he was, proposing to her in the hallway of the 22nd floor. "Mr. Mendonça, I need to get back to work," she said, trying to get around him, "and you must be very busy with important things." Gabriel gently blocked her path, not aggressively but enough to make her stop. "What's your name?" "Hayley Smith, sir." The answer came out automatically, the result of years of strict upbringing about respecting superiors. "Hayley," he repeated the name as if he were savoring each syllable. "You don't understand. In 37 years, I've never felt what I felt when you fell into my arms. Never." "You don't know me," Hayley protested, feeling as if she were in a bizarre dream. "I'm just a receptionist. I live in Chinatown with my mother and brother. I take the bus to work every day. We don't even live in the same world." "Exactly," Gabriel said, and there was an intensity in his voice that made her stop trying to flee. "You're real, Hayley. In a world full of masks and hidden agendas, you're genuine. I saw it in your eyes." Hayley felt tears starting to form, a mixture of confusion, fear, and something else she couldn't name. "Mr. Mendonça, please. This can't be happening." "Dinner," Gabriel said suddenly, changing tactics. "Let me take you to dinner. Tonight. Just that, a chance to get to know each other better. I can't, Haley replied immediately. I have to help my brother with his homework and my mother. Tomorrow then. Mr. Mendonça. Gabriel, just Gabriel. The elevator opened again, and 3 executives came out, stopping abruptly at the sight. Gabriel Mendonça, the most powerful man in the building, talking intently with a receptionist. In the middle of the hallway, papers scattered around her feet as evidence of some accident. Good afternoon, Mr. Mendonça, one of them said cautiously. Gabriel nodded briefly without taking his eyes off Haley. Good afternoon, Rodriguez. Haley took advantage of the distraction to dodge him, quickly gathering the last papers from the floor. I really need to go, Sir Gabriel. My shift should have ended already. She ran towards the elevator, pressing the button frantically. Gabriel followed her, completely ignoring the curious looks of the executives. Haley, wait. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside quickly, turning to face him one last time. Please, forget this happened. Forget I exist. Impossible, Gabriel replied, placing his hand on the door to prevent it from closing. You changed something in me in a matter of seconds. I can't just forget that. I'm not who you think I am, Haley said, tears finally streaming down her face. I'm not special. I'm not. You are everything. Gabriel interrupted, his voice low but intense. And I'm going to prove that to you. The doors began to close and he withdrew his hand. Haley saw him for the last time through the glass, standing in the hallway like a statue, his eyes fixed on her with a determination that frightened and thrilled her at the same time. Throughout the descent, Haley tried to process what had happened. Gabriel Mendonça had asked for her hand. The richest man she knew had looked at her and seen something that not even she recognized. It was impossible, absurd, a fairy tale that made no sense in her reality of overdue bills and crowded buses. When she reached the ground floor, she tried to normalize her breathing and return to her routine, but she knew that something had changed, irrevocably. In the next few hours, she would discover exactly how serious Gabriel Mendonça was. Because the moment the elevator doors closed, he was already on the phone with Marcia, giving specific instructions about a young woman named Haley Smith who worked at the reception desk. He was going to find out everything about her, and he wouldn't rest until he proved that this casual encounter had been fate intervening in their lives. The hunt had begun, and Haley still didn't know that she had become the most precious prey of the most determined predator in New York. The next morning, Haley arrived at work hoping that the madness of the previous day had been just a vivid dream. But as she approached the reception desk, she found her supervisor, Mrs. Davies, holding a bouquet of white roses the size of a small shrub. Haley, honey, what's this all about? Mrs. Davies asked with her eyes sparkling with curiosity. A delivery guy came to leave this for you 10 minutes ago, and look at the card. With trembling hands, Haley took the small cream-colored card. To Haley, the woman who reminded me that miracles exist, awaiting your answer about dinner. Gabriel. Gabriel? Mrs. Davies almost shouted. Gabriel who? My God, girl, you have a secret admirer. Before Haley could answer, the reception desk phone rang. It was an internal call. Reception, good morning, Haley answered automatically. Haley Smith, please report to the 70th floor immediately, said a female, efficient voice. Mr. Mendonça would like to speak with you. Haley's blood ran cold. Mrs. Davies widened her eyes. Mr. Mendonça, Gabriel Mendonça, Mrs. Davies whispered in shock. Haley, what have you done? 20 minutes later, Haley was in the executive elevator, ascending through the highest floors of the building where she had never set foot. Her legs trembled, and she held the roses like a protective shield. The elevator stopped on the top floor, revealing an environment of understated luxury, marble, fine wood, and a panoramic view of New York that took her breath away. "Haley Smith?" An elegant, middle-aged woman approached. "I'm Marcia Santos, Mr. Mendonca's executive assistant. He's waiting." Gabriel looked up from his reports the moment Haley entered his office. He had exchanged the suit from the previous day for another impeccable one, but his eyes had the same disturbing intensity. "You came," he said, as if he were genuinely surprised. "Your assistant said it was mandatory," Haley replied, keeping her distance. "And thank you for the flowers, but I can't accept them." "Why not?" "Because this is—" Haley searched for the right words. "Because I don't understand what you want from me." Gabriel walked to the window, gesturing for her to come closer. Reluctantly, Haley obeyed, holding the roses as a barrier between them. "See that city down there?" Gabriel asked. "I can buy anything in it, anyone, any experience. But in 37 years, I've never felt what I felt yesterday when you fell into my arms." "You felt sorry," Haley murmured. "I'm just a simple girl who tripped over your important documents." "No," Gabriel said, turning to face her. "You reminded me of who I used to be." There was something in his voice that made Haley finally look at him without looking away. For the first time, she saw beyond the power and wealth. She saw loneliness. "Who did you used to be?" Gabriel went to his desk, picked up a framed photo he kept turned face down. It was a young man of perhaps 20 years old, smiling genuinely next to a beautiful dark-haired woman. "This was me at 22, he said, showing the photo to Haley. "Fresh out of business school, full of dreams about changing the world. And she was Isabella, my fiancée." Haley studied the photo. The young Gabriel had the same grey eyes, but there was a lightness in them that the man in front of her had long lost. "What happened?" she asked softly. "She taught me that love and money are incompatible," Gabriel replied, putting the photo away again. "At least for men like me." He told Haley about Isabella, how he had been poor when they met, how she swore to love him regardless of his financial situation, how he had built his empire thinking about giving her the world, only to discover that she was cheating on him with his best friend, a man who had no money, but had time for her. She said I had changed, that money had turned me into someone cold and distant, Gabriel continued. Maybe she was right, but it was the betrayal that really destroyed me. Haley felt her heart clenching. Slowly, she placed the roses on his desk. "I'm sorry," she said sincerely. "It must have been terrible to find that out." "It's been 12 years, Haley. 12 years without trusting any woman. Until yesterday." "But you don't know me," Haley protested. "How can you trust someone you don't even know?" "Because you don't know who I am," Gabriel replied, moving closer to her. "Yesterday, when you fell into my arms, you didn't see Gabriel Mendonca, the billionaire. You saw just a man, and I saw just a genuine woman, without masks, without calculations." Haley felt the tears forming again. There was a painful truth in his words that struck her deeply. "I'm afraid," she admitted in a whisper. "I'm very afraid of men like you." "Why?" Haley hesitated. It was a secret she had never told anyone, not even her mother. "Because when I was 16, my mother's boss tried to... He said that if she didn't lose her job, I would have to be nice to him." The words came out broken, loaded with an old pain. He had power, money, respect in society, and we had nothing to defend ourselves with. Gabriel felt something break inside his chest. The vulnerability in Haley's voice, the way she hugged herself while telling the story, the courage it must have taken to share this with him. "What happened?" he asked, his voice softer than Haley had ever heard. "My mother lost her job. We almost lost our apartment. I promised myself that I would never again be in a position to be vulnerable to powerful men who think they can buy whatever they want. Silence stretched between them, laden with painful confessions and an unexpected mutual understanding. "Haley," Gabriel said finally, "I would never hurt you. I swear on everything that is sacred." "How can I believe that?" she asked, a tear rolling down her face. "You are exactly the type of man I learned to avoid." Gabriel knelt in front of her, a gesture that shocked Haley completely. The most powerful man she knew was kneeling before her, his grey eyes shining with an intensity that cut through her soul. "Then give me a chance to prove that not all men with power are monsters," he said. "Give me a chance to show you that I can be different." Haley looked at him, seeing beyond the wealth and status for the first time. Seeing a wounded man who, like her, had learned to protect himself by building walls around his heart. And for the first time since they met, she seriously considered the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this impossible encounter could be the beginning of something real. 3 days had passed since the conversation in Gabriel's office. Haley had agreed to have lunch with him the next day, a commitment she spent the whole night considering cancelling. But something in the vulnerability he had shown, the way he knelt before her, made her want to better understand this complex man. The restaurant Gabriel chose was discreet but elegant, far from the social circles where they both could be recognized. For 2 hours, they talked like two normal people, about books, dreams, fears. Haley discovered that Gabriel read poetry in his sleepless nights, and he was fascinated by the way she talked about her passion for numbers and her dream of having her own accounting firm one day. "Why accounting?" he had asked, genuinely curious. "Because numbers don't lie," Haley replied simply. "They're honest. You can trust them." That Thursday, Haley was organizing her desk when her cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Haley Smith." The voice was male, unfamiliar. "Yes. Who is this?" "You need to come to New York Presbyterian Hospital immediately." "It's about Gabriel." "Mendonça." Haley's blood ran cold. "What happened? Who are you?" "I'm Dr. Ricardo Almeida. There was an accident. He's asking for you." Haley dropped everything. Pens, papers, the cup of coffee she was holding. Without explaining anything to Mrs. Davies, she ran out of the building, flagged down the first taxi she found, and gave the hospital address with her heart racing. Throughout the ride, her mind spun uncontrollably. In just a few days, Gabriel had become a constant presence in her thoughts. The idea that something terrible could have happened to him left her desperate in a way she hadn't expected. At the hospital, a nurse directed her to the 5th floor. Haley rushed through the corridors until she found Dr. Almeida, a middle-aged man with a serious expression. "How is he?" "What happened?" Haley asked, breathless. "Car accident. On the FDR drive. Head-on collision," the doctor explained as they walked. "He was lucky. Superficial injuries, some bruised ribs, but nothing serious. The problem is that he refused sedatives and is quite agitated. He keeps asking for Haley Smith." They stopped in front of a room. Through the glass, Haley could see Gabriel in bed, with bandages on his face and arm, trying to get up while a nurse tried to restrain him. "Haley!" Gabriel shouted the moment he saw her enter. "You came." She ran to the bed, without thinking, took his hand in hers. I'm here." Gabriel relaxed immediately at her touch, closing his eyes as if an unbearable pain had finally passed. "I thought I wouldn't see you again," he murmured, squeezing her hand. "When the car flipped, the only thing I could think about was you. About how I had been an idiot for not fighting harder to convince you." "Don't talk like that," Haley whispered, feeling the tears running down her face. "You're okay. Everything's okay." "No, Haley. Everything is not okay." Gabriel opened his eyes and stared at her with desperate intensity. "I'm in love with you. I know it's crazy. I know we've only known each other for a few days, but almost dying made me realize that I can't waste any more time pretending this isn't happening. Haley felt as if the world had stopped. There he was, injured and vulnerable, declaring a love that should be impossible, but that resonated in every fiber of her being. "Gabriel, marry me," he said again, but this time it wasn't an impulse. It was a plea from a man who had faced mortality and discovered what really mattered. "Not because it's what I said when I met you, but because I can't imagine a future without you in it." Before Haley could answer, the room door opened abruptly. An elegant woman in her 60s entered like a hurricane, followed by a younger man in an expensive suit. "Gabriel, my son." The woman rushed to the bed. "When we heard about the accident," Gabriel visibly tensed. "Mom, Bernard." Haley tried to release his hand, but Gabriel held it tighter. "Who is this person?" The woman, whom Haley presumed to be Mrs. Margaret Mendonça, the matriarch of the family, looked at her as if she were an unwanted stain on the Persian rug. "This is Haley Smith," Gabriel said, his voice regaining some of its usual authority. "The woman I'm going to marry." The silence that followed was glacial. Bernard, whom Haley deduced was Gabriel's younger brother, laughed unpleasantly. "Gabriel, the accident affected you more than we thought," Bernard said. "You're delirious. I've never been more lucid in my life." Mrs. Margaret approached Haley, with eyes as cold as ice. "Young lady, I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull on my son in a moment of vulnerability, but—" "Mom, stop," Gabriel interrupted, trying to get out of bed despite the nurse's protests. "She's an obvious opportunist," Bernard added, studying Haley from head to toe. "Just look at her clothes, Gabriel. She works on the ground floor of your building, for God's sake." Haley felt her face burn with shame. Her simple blouse and sail skirt seemed even more inadequate under the scrutiny of those people. I should go," Haley murmured, trying again to release Gabriel's hand. "No!" Gabriel's voice was firm. "Haley stays." "Gabriel, be sensible," Mrs. Margaret continued. "You have responsibilities. The company, the family, your commitment to Patricia." "What commitment?" Gabriel asked, dangerously calm. "Next week's dinner with the Costa family," Bernard explained. "Patricia is looking forward to seeing you again." Haley felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Patricia. Of course there was a Patricia, probably wealthy, educated, from the same social level. The type of woman Gabriel's family would approve of. "There will be no dinner with the Costa family," Gabriel said coldly, "and there is no commitment to Patricia. There is only Haley." "This is ridiculous," Mrs. Margaret exploded. "You've known this girl for a week." "And that was enough," Gabriel replied, finally managing to sit up in bed. "Haley, look at me." Reluctantly, Haley raised her eyes to meet his. "I know this is scary. I know my family isn't making things easy, but I need you to know that everything I said is true. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." Haley's tears fell freely now. There she was, in the middle of a family war she hadn't sought, being forced to make a decision that would change her life forever. "Gabriel, I can't," she began. "Sensible," Bernard murmured approvingly. "I can't make this decision now, with you hurt and your family hating me." Haley continued, "But I also can't pretend that I don't feel something for you." Gabriel smiled for the first time since the accident. "That's all I need to hear." "This is a disaster," Mrs. Margaret declared. "Bernard, call Dr. Miller. Gabriel clearly needs psychiatric evaluation. The only thing I need," Gabriel said, kissing Haley's hand softly, "is the woman I love by my side." And at that moment, Haley knew there was no turning back. The event had sealed their fate irrevocably. The consequences, his family's wrath, the class difference, the social pressure, were problems to be faced later. Now she knew for sure. that she was hopelessly in love with Gabriel Mendonça and that this was going to cost a lot more than she imagined. A week after the accident, Hailey's life had become a hurricane. Gabriel was discharged the next day, but not before making their relationship public in the most dramatic way possible. He hired an entire florist to fill the Rockefeller Center corporate building's lobby with red roses, each with a card that read, "To my future wife, Hailey." The romantic gesture became the talk of all of New York in a matter of hours. The photos spread on social media, the high society gossip blogs exploded, and Hailey found herself at the center of a media storm, for which she was not prepared. "Hailey, honey, what's this story in the newspapers?" Mrs. Lee asked on Friday morning, holding the tablet that the neighbor had lent her. The photo of Hailey leaving the hospital, holding hands with Gabriel, was splashed on the cover of the digital magazine Society and Business with the headline, "The Billionaire and the Cinderella, Gabriel Mendonça finds love on the ground floor." "Mom, I can explain," Hailey began, but was interrupted by the ringing of the phone. It was the fifth journalist trying to get an interview since 7 in the morning. Work became impossible. Photographers camped at the entrance of the building, and Hailey couldn't take a step without being bombarded with questions. Gabriel, realizing the situation, temporarily transferred her to work on his floor, claiming he needed an additional personal assistant. "This will only make the situation worse," Hailey protested when he explained the plan. "People will think you promoted me because of our relationship." "So what?" Gabriel replied, adjusting his tie in the mirror of his office. "I own the company. I can promote whoever I want." But Hailey was right. The move generated even more speculation. Employees whispered in the hallways, and she could feel the looks of disapproval and envy wherever she went. It was the following Tuesday that the situation became truly dangerous. Hailey was organizing documents in the anteroom of Gabriel's office when Marcia intercepted her with a worried expression. "Hailey, I need to talk to you privately." They went to an empty conference room. Marcia closed the door and turned to her seriously. "There's something you need to know about the Mendonça family," Marcia began. "I've worked for Gabriel for 15 years. I've seen how they operate when someone threatens their plans." "What kind of plans?" Mrs. Margaret had practically arranged Gabriel's marriage to Patricia Costa. The two families would merge empires, deals worth billions. Marcia paused. "Your presence is ruining decades of planning." Hailey felt a chill down her spine. "What are you trying to tell me?" "Yesterday, I overheard Bernard on the phone with someone. He was talking about eliminating the problem and finding something that could be used. Hailey, I think they're investigating you." Before Hailey could answer, the door opened. Gabriel entered, smiling until he saw their expressions. "Any problem?" he asked. "None, Mr. Mendonça," Marcia replied quickly, "just explaining some procedures to Hailey." But Gabriel knew his assistant too well. After Marcia left, he turned to Hailey. "What did she really say?" Hailey hesitated. Telling Gabriel could cause an irreversible family war. Not telling him could be even more dangerous. "She thinks your family is investigating me," Hailey admitted finally. Gabriel's eyes darkened. "What kind of investigation?" "To find something that can be used against me." Gabriel pulled out his cell phone immediately. "Bernard, my office, now." 15 minutes later, Bernard entered with an air that was too casual to be natural. "Good to see you recovered, brother," he said, greeting Gabriel with a pat on the back. "Hailey, you look beautiful today." The false charm made Hailey feel nauseous. "Cut the act, Bernard," Gabriel said coldly. "I know you're investigating Hailey." "Investigating is a very strong word," Bernard replied, helping himself to whiskey at the office bar at 3 in the afternoon. "Let's say we're being careful." "Careful about what?" "Gabriel, you're a smart man. But when it comes to women," Bernard shrugged. "Remember Isabella, The name fell like a bomb in the room. Haley saw Gabriel tense completely. Haley is not Isabella. They're all the same when there's money at stake, Bernard replied. And this little girlfriend of yours has some interesting background. Haley felt her blood run cold. What background? Bernard smiled like a shark smelling blood in the water. Well, to start with, her family has a history of financial problems. Her father abandoned them, leaving a mountain of debt. Her mother lost several jobs for inappropriate behavior. At least that's what the former bosses say. You're lying, Haley whispered, but her voice came out weak. And there's also the matter of your little brother. How old is he even? 15, the perfect age to get into trouble. Bernard paused for a sip. It would be a shame if he were, let's say, planted with drugs in his school backpack. You wouldn't dare, Gabriel said, taking a threatening step toward his brother. I wouldn't do anything, Bernard replied innocently, but accidents happen, especially with families that get involved in situations above their social standing. Haley felt her legs give way. She sat down in the nearest chair, the reality of the situation finally hitting her squarely. It wasn't just about her. Her entire family was being threatened. What do you want? Gabriel asked, his voice dangerously low. We want you to be sensible, Bernard replied. Break up with this charade. Marry Patricia as planned. And everyone is happy. What if I refuse? Well, it would be really regrettable if we discovered that the Smith family is involved in questionable activities, tax evasion maybe, unduly received social benefits, the kind of thing that can result in jail time. Haley stood up abruptly. Gabriel, I need to leave. Haley, don't. No, Gabriel. Your family is right. I don't belong in this world. Tears ran freely down her face now, and I won't let my family pay the price for my naivete. You can't give up now, Gabriel pleaded, holding her arm gently. Not because of them. It's not just because of them, Haley replied, pulling away. It's because I finally understood that fairy tales don't exist. Princes don't marry commoners, and when they try, innocent people get hurt. She left the office, leaving Gabriel and Bernard alone. In the elevator as she descended, Haley knew that her life had changed irrevocably. She had tasted true love, but discovered that some social barriers are too high to overcome. What she didn't know was that Bernard had already set his plan in motion. That same afternoon, forged documents would arrive at the IRS accusing the Smith family of tax evasion. And at Lucas's school, her younger brother, some classmates, were already being paid to plant evidence that could ruin the boy's future. The war had officially begun, and Haley was about to discover that she had completely underestimated how far the Mendonça family was willing to go to protect their interests. 2 days after the conversation with Bernard, Haley woke up, with her mother shaking her desperately at 6 in the morning. Haley, Haley, wake up! The police are here! Haley's blood ran cold. She jumped out of bed and ran to the living room, where 2 NYPD officers were showing documents to Mrs. Lee, who was trembling like a leaf. Ms. Haley Smith? One of the officers asked upon seeing her. You need to come with us to answer questions about tax irregularities involving your family. What irregularities? Haley asked, trying to remain calm. Tax evasion, undue receipt of government assistance, forgery of documents, the officer listed coldly. We have enough evidence for a preventative arrest warrant. Haley felt the world collapse. Bernard's threats had become reality. Mom, where's Lucas? She asked, looking for her brother. He left for school early, Mrs. Lee replied between sobs. Haley, I don't understand any of this. We've never done anything wrong. At the precinct, Haley spent 4 hours being interrogated about documents she had never seen, benefits she had never applied for, altered tax returns that supposedly contained her signature. It was a perfect setup, with paperwork that looked authentic and witnesses who swore they had seen the Smith family in compromising situations. When she finally managed to make a call, Haley tried to talk to Gabriel, but Marcia informed her that he was in an emergency board meeting and couldn't be interrupted. "Please, Marcia, it's urgent," Haley pleaded. "I'm very sorry, Haley, but the orders are not to transfer calls to Mr. Mendonça today." Haley hung up, knowing she was alone. She managed to get a public defender who quickly looked at the documents and shook his head in dismay. "Look, young lady, I'll be honest with you. Whoever set this up is a professional. It's going to be difficult to prove it's forged." At 5 in the afternoon, Haley was released on bail that she didn't have the money to pay. The amount was only paid when an unknown lawyer appeared claiming to represent a client interested in helping. "Who is your client?" Haley asked. "Prefers to remain anonymous," the man replied, "but asked me to deliver this to you." It was a sealed envelope. Inside, there was a photo that made Haley feel as if she had been punched in the stomach. Gabriel was at an elegant restaurant, smiling at Patricia Costa, a stunning brunette who wore an engagement ring on her finger. The photo had been taken the night before, according to the date on the back. Along with the photo, there was a note. "While you rot in jail, your Prince Charming has already found a real princess. Accept your condition and disappear from our lives. B." Haley arrived home destroyed physically and emotionally to find Mrs. Lee on the couch, holding Lucas, who was crying compulsively. "What happened?" Haley asked, running to them. "They found drugs in his locker at school," Mrs. Lee said between tears. "He swears he doesn't know how they got there, but they're going to expel him. And there's more, Haley. The landlord was here, said he received an anonymous complaint about illegal activities in the apartment. We have a week to move out." Haley hugged her brother, feeling the anger and despair consuming her. Everything was falling apart exactly as Bernard had promised. "I'm going to fix this," she murmured to Lucas. "I promise." That night, Haley took 2 buses to get to Manhattan. She went up to the 70th floor of the building where Gabriel was still working, according to the light on in his office. Marcia had left, so Haley knocked directly on Gabriel's office door. "Come in," he said without looking up from the documents. When he saw Haley, Gabriel stood up immediately, coming towards her with a worried expression. "Haley, I heard about the police. I tried to call you all day, but you were too busy having dinner with your fiancée," Haley interrupted, throwing the photo on his desk. Gabriel picked up the photo, his expression changing to confusion and then anger. "Haley, I can explain." "No need," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "I got the message. Your family made it very clear what my place is. You don't understand. My mother scheduled that dinner without consulting me. I only went to definitively cancel any expectations with Patricia. And you gave her an engagement ring to celebrate the cancellation?" Haley laughed bitterly. "Gabriel, stop, just stop. What ring?" Gabriel looked at the photo again, confused. "Haley, I swear on everything that is sacred, I didn't give her any ring." "It doesn't matter anymore," Haley said, the tears finally starting to fall. "My family is being destroyed because of you. My brother was expelled from school. We're going to lose our home. My mother could go to prison for crimes she didn't commit." Gabriel tried to approach, but Haley recoiled. "Don't touch me," she said. "Never touch me again." "Haley, we're going to solve this together. I'm going to hire the best lawyers. I'm going to..." "You're going to what?" Haley exploded. "You're going to fight against your own family. You're going to destroy everything they've built for a receptionist you've known for 2 weeks?" "Yes," Gabriel shouted back. "If necessary, yes." "Well, I'm not going to let you do that," Haley replied, wiping away her tears. "And I'm not going to let my family be destroyed because of an impossible fairy tale that I was foolish enough to believe." She walked to the door, but turned back one last time. "Your family was right, Gabriel. I'm an opportunist, but not in the way they think." Her voice was low and full of pain. "I saw an opportunity to be loved by someone like you, and I risked everything that really mattered to me. my family, my dignity, my safety. Haley, please. Marry Patricia, she said finally. Be happy with someone from your world and forget me. Haley left the office knowing that she was leaving behind not only Gabriel, but the only chance at true love she might have in her life. But as she descended in the elevator, thinking about Lucas crying and her mother desperate, she knew she had made the only possible choice. Outside the building, she didn't see Bernard watching from the window of his own office on the lower floor, smiling with satisfaction. The plan had worked perfectly. The photo had been digitally altered to include the ring. The evidence against the Smith family was solid enough to guarantee at least a few months of legal trouble, and Gabriel was finally alone. What Bernard didn't expect was that, at that exact moment, in the office on the upper floor, Gabriel was making a call that would change everything. Marcus, this is Gabriel Mendonça. I need you to investigate my brother. I want to know everything. Bank accounts, phone calls, contacts. From the last 6 months, everything. The war was far from over, but Haley didn't know that as she walked through the streets of New York, carrying the pieces of her shattered heart and the fierce determination to protect her family, even if it meant sacrificing the only thing that made her truly happy. A week after the confrontation with Gabriel, Haley was working as a cashier in a supermarket in Greenwich Village. The salary was lower than at the reception desk, but it was the only job she managed to arrange quickly, without references from her previous employment. Mrs. Lee had found work as a cleaner, and together they rented a room in a boarding house. While trying to resolve the legal situation, Lucas was at home, suspended from school, helping with typing jobs that Haley got through a freelancing agency. The boy had lost weight, and Haley saw in his eyes a sadness that broke her heart. "Sis, I'm so sorry," Lucas said on Thursday night as he helped Haley count the day's money. "If I hadn't gone to that school, none of this would have happened." "It wasn't your fault, Lou," Haley replied, tousling her brother's hair. "Someone wanted to hurt us, and we're going to find out who it was." But inside, Haley was losing hope. The public defender had informed her that the case was being treated with top priority, which was suspicious in itself, and that the evidence was surprisingly solid for someone in their social position. It was on Friday that everything began to change. Haley was organizing the groceries of an elderly customer when she heard a familiar voice. "Excuse me, could you help me with these products?" Haley turned and came face to face with Marcia Santos, Gabriel's assistant. The older woman was dressed casually, wearing jeans and a simple blouse completely different from the elegant suit she used to wear. "Marcia, what are you doing here?" Haley asked, looking around nervously. "We need to talk," Marcia said softly. "What time do you finish?" "In 20 minutes, but I can't." "Haley, it's about Gabriel and about what really happened to your family." Haley hesitated. Part of her wanted to send Marcia away and continue trying to rebuild her life away from anything related to the Mendonças, but curiosity and a spark of hope was stronger. "There's a coffee shop around the corner," Haley said finally. "Wait for me there." 40 minutes later, they were sitting at a table in the back of the coffee shop, away from prying ears. Marcia seemed nervous, constantly looking over her shoulder. "Gabriel has been looking for me for a week," Marcia began. "He doesn't know. I came to talk to you." "Why are you doing this then?" "Because in 15 years working for him, I've never seen Gabriel so destroyed. He doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep, he only works. And because," Marcia paused, "because I have 2 daughters, Haley. And if someone did to them what they did to you, I would want someone with important information to have the courage to speak." Haley felt her heart race. "What information?" Marcia opened her purse and took out an envelope. "Everything you need to know is here. Gabriel has been investigating Bernard for days. And what he discovered? Marcia, I can't get involved. In this again, Haley interrupted. My family has already suffered too much. Your family suffered because Bernard has been doing this for years, Marcia replied. He didn't just destroy you, Haley. He destroyed other people who threatened the Mendonça family's plans, including, she hesitated, including the real reason why Isabella betrayed Gabriel. Haley's blood ran cold. What do you mean? Isabella didn't betray Gabriel for love or for money. She was forced. Bernard discovered that her father was embezzling money from the company where he worked, a company that secretly belonged to the Mendonça family. Bernard blackmailed Isabella. Either she broke up with Gabriel in a humiliating way, making him believe she had been betrayed, or her father would go to prison. Haley felt nauseous. Does Gabriel know this? He found out 3 days ago. Isabella confirmed everything when he contacted her. She cried, asked for forgiveness, said she spent 12 years carrying that guilt. Marcia leaned forward. Haley, Gabriel has never been rejected by gold-digging women. He was systematically isolated by his own brother to maintain control over the family fortune. Haley took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside there were documents, photos, recordings. The dinner with Patricia was a setup, Marcia continued. Bernard drugged Gabriel with mild sedatives in the wine, enough to leave him confused and sleepy. Then he put Patricia next to him, gave her a fake ring to wear only during the photos, and hired a photographer to record the scene. How did you find this out? Gabriel suspected when he saw the photo. He vaguely remembered the night, but he knew something was wrong. So he hired private investigators. Marcia showed other photos. These are the men who planted drugs in your brother's locker. Gabriel recognized them. They are security guards that Bernard sometimes hires for special services. Haley studied the documents, feeling anger and relief in equal measure. Everything was there. The bank transfers from Bernard to falsify the tax documents, the recordings where he coordinated the actions against the Smith family, even a draft of the plan to eliminate undue influence on Gabriel. Why are you showing me this, Marcia? Haley asked. Why don't you go straight to the police? Because Gabriel wants to do this the right way. He wants you to know the truth first. He wants you to choose to be by his side when we confront Bernard, or for you to stay away if you prefer. Marcia paused, but mostly he wants you to know that never, not for a second, did he doubt your love. Even when you accused him of giving the ring to Patricia, even when you said you were using him, Gabriel knew that you were lying to protect your family. Tears began to fall down Haley's face. He said that? He said that a woman capable of sacrificing her own happiness to protect the people she loves would never be able to use someone for money. Marcia smiled. And that if you were really an opportunist, you would have accepted his help instead of disappearing. Haley closed her eyes, processing everything. The pain of the last week, the feeling of betrayal, the guilt for having put her family in danger. Everything had been orchestrated by Bernard. What does Gabriel want to do? She asked finally. Tomorrow night there's a meeting of the company. Board. All the main shareholders will be present, including Mrs. Margaret and Bernard. Gabriel is going to present all the evidence publicly. He's going to expose Bernard for everything, not only for what he did to you, but for years of manipulation and crimes. And then he's going to propose to you again, in front of everyone, proving that his choice is you, regardless of what the family thinks. Haley felt her heart race. The idea of having Gabriel back, of clearing her family's name, of finally confronting Bernard, was too tempting to resist. But I have one condition, Haley said. What is it? I want to be there. Not hidden, not protected. I want to look Bernard in the eye when Gabriel exposes everything he did, and I want to be the one to accept or refuse Gabriel's proposal. Marcia smiled. He'll be very happy to hear. In that. Marcia, Haley said as they stood up to leave. Why did you risk your job to tell me this? Because some things are more important than a job, she replied. And because that man saved me when my ex-husband tried to destroy me financially. 10 years ago, I owe him much more than professional loyalty. Haley returned home that night feeling, for the first time in a week, that maybe there was hope. Tomorrow would be the final confrontation, and regardless of the outcome, she would face it head-on. What she didn't know was that Bernard was also preparing for the final battle, and that he had one last card that could destroy not only Haley, but Gabriel too. The boardroom on the 70th floor of the Rockefeller Center corporate building had never witnessed such tension. The 12 members of the board of directors of Mendonça Holdings were seated around the mahogany table, along with Mrs. Margaret, who occupied the head of the table as the family matriarch. Bernard was comfortably settled to her right, flipping through documents with a casual air. Gabriel entered punctually at 8 o'clock that night, wearing his best suit, but with an expression that none of those present had seen before, a mixture of determination and contained fury. "Good evening, everyone," Gabriel said, assuming his position at the other head of the table. "Thank you for attending this extraordinary meeting. Gabriel, I hope you've called us here to announce your engagement to Patricia," Mrs. Margaret said, smiling confidently. "It would be a perfect way to end this turbulent phase of your life." "Actually, Mom, I came to announce something very different." Gabriel activated the room's projector, and the first image that appeared was a photo of Haley, smiling shyly at her reception desk. "This is Haley Smith, the woman I love and intend to marry." A murmur of disapproval ran through the room. Bernard chuckled softly. "Gabriel, we've already discussed this. This fixation isn't healthy." "You're right, Bernard. Let's discuss unhealthy fixations." Gabriel changed the slide, revealing a photo of Bernard entering a discreet office in downtown. "Like your fixation on controlling my personal life for over a decade." Bernard's expression changed slightly, but he maintained his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Then let me clarify." Gabriel clicked on the remote, and Bernard's voice filled the room through an audio recording. "I want you to plant the drugs in the kid's locker and make sure witnesses see him acting suspiciously." Before, the silence in the room was absolute. Mrs. Margaret turned as pale as paper. "This is a setup," Bernard said, but his voice no longer had the same confidence. "Is it really?" Gabriel continued to advance the slides, showing bank transfers, emails, photos of Bernard with the men who planted the drugs in Lucas's school, and this conversation with the accountant who forged the Smith family's tax documents. Is that also a setup? Another recording began to play. "It needs to look authentic, Ramirez. If they find out it's fake, you're going down with me. Do it." "Right, and there's another 50 grand waiting." Bernard stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. "Gabriel, you don't know what you're doing. This family has a reputation to maintain. Like you maintained the reputation when you destroyed Isabella," Gabriel replied, his voice growing in intensity. "When you blackmailed a 20-year-old girl so that she would break up with me in a humiliating way, so that I would never trust any woman again," Mrs. Margaret whispered. "What is he saying, Bernard?" "He's saying that your youngest son is a psychopath who has been manipulating our family for years," a female voice answered from the entrance of the room. Everyone turned to see Haley walking through the door, wearing a simple but elegant navy blue dress, her hair loose on her shoulders, her head held high with dignity. Behind her came Mrs. Lee and Lucas, clearly nervous but determined. "How dare you enter here?" Mrs. Margaret stood up indignantly. "I invited them," Gabriel said, walking to Haley and offering her his arm. "This is my family, the family I chose." Haley accepted his arm, and together they walked to the conference table. "Bernard Mendonça," Haley said, looking directly into the eyes of Gabriel's brother-in-law. During the last week, you tried to destroy my family, put my brother in jail, and ruin the only chance of happiness your brother has had in 12 years. I'd like to know why. Because you don't belong in our world, Bernard replied with venom in his voice. Because you're a cheap opportunist who seduced my brother when he was vulnerable. Vulnerable. Haley laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Gabriel was vulnerable because you spent years systematically destroying any chance he had of being happy. You weren't protecting the family, Bernard. You were protecting your access to his fortune. Gabriel advanced another slide, revealing financial documents. Speaking of fortune, Gabriel said, I would like everyone to know that Bernard has been embezzling money from the company for 5 years. Small amounts, difficult to detect, but which added up to $12 million. The board exploded in indignant exclamations. Mrs. Margaret sat down heavily, as if she had been punched. You're lying, Bernard shouted. All this is a farce. To justify your pathetic relationship with this, watch the next word that comes out of your mouth, Gabriel said, his voice dangerously low. Because this woman is worth more than you ever were. Haley released Gabriel's arm and walked to Bernard, stopping right in front of him. You know what the difference between me and you is, Bernard? She asked calmly. You had everything in life, money, education, opportunities, and you chose to use that to destroy people. I had nothing, but I chose to protect the people I love, even when it meant sacrificing my own. Happiness. She turned to Mrs. Margaret. Mrs. Margaret, you raised 2 sons, one who builds empires and helps people, and another who destroys lives for pleasure. Do you really believe that I'm the bad influence in this family? Mrs. Margaret looked at Haley, then at Bernard, then at Gabriel. For the first time, she seemed to really see the situation clearly. Bernard, she said slowly, is all this true? Bernard looked around the room, seeing only faces of condemnation. His mask finally fell completely. Everything I did was to protect this family, he exploded. Gabriel is weak. He lets himself be carried away by any pretty woman who appears. If I hadn't intervened, he would have lost everything years ago. Protect or control? Gabriel asked. Because for 12 years, you made me believe that I was incapable of loving or being loved. Convinced me that I was better off alone. And when I finally found someone who made me feel whole again, you tried to destroy not only me, but her and her innocent family. Gabriel knelt in front of Haley, exactly as he had done in his office weeks ago. The difference was that now, instead of an impulsive decision, it was a conscious choice made before witnesses. Haley Smith, he said, taking a simple but elegant ring from his pocket, you taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, but doing the right thing even when afraid. You chose to protect your family even knowing that it meant losing me. You chose the truth even when it was painful. You chose love even when it seemed impossible. Tears ran freely down Haley's face now. Will you marry me? Gabriel continued. Not because I asked in a crazy first moment, but because I can't imagine a future without you by my side. Because I want to face all the challenges that will come with you, and I want you to be my partner in everything, in business, in life, in dreams. Haley looked around the room. Mrs. Margaret was crying silently. Several members of the board were smiling. Bernard was being escorted out by security guards that Gabriel had discreetly positioned. She looked at her mother and Lucas, who nodded encouragingly. Finally, she looked at Gabriel, the man who had changed her life in a hallway, who had fought for her when she thought she was alone, who had chosen her even when it cost him a family war. Yes, she said, her voice clear and firm. Yes, I agree to marry you. The room exploded in applause. Gabriel slid the ring on Haley's finger and kissed her, a kiss that sealed not only a commitment, but the victory of love over all the obstacles that tried to separate them. 6 months later, Hayley walked down the aisle of a simple but beautiful church in Greenwich Village, wearing the wedding dress that she and her mother had chosen together, elegant but not extravagant. Gabriel was at the altar, smiling with a genuine happiness that everyone present could feel. Mrs. Margaret was in the front row, having become a fierce advocate for Hayley after discovering the truth about Bernard. The youngest son was serving his sentence under house arrest for several financial crimes, but Gabriel had refused to criminally prosecute the actions against Hayley, preferring to focus on rebuilding. Lucas, now enrolled in a private school with a full scholarship sponsored discreetly by Gabriel, was the one who took Hayley to the altar. Mrs. Lee was radiant, wearing the first new dress she had bought in years. "Who gives this woman in marriage?" the priest asked. "She gives herself," Lucas replied as Hayley had requested, "because my sister has always been strong enough to make her own choices." Gabriel took Hayley's hand, and when their eyes met, both remembered that moment in the hallway when an accidental fall turned into the beginning of the greatest adventure of their lives. "To think it all started with you tripping over my documents," Gabriel murmured, making Hayley laugh. "Technically, you tripped over me," she whispered back, "and it was the best thing that ever happened to me." When the priest declared them husband and wife, and they kissed, sealing their union, it wasn't just the end of an improbable love story. It was the beginning of a life built on solid foundations, honesty, courage, and the conviction that true love doesn't see social classes, doesn't calculate benefits, and always finds a way when two people are willing to fight for each other. Hayley Smith Mendonça would prove in the years that followed that a simple receptionist could not only adapt to the business world, but revolutionize it with her unwavering ethics and her ability to see opportunities where others saw only problems. And Gabriel would discover that having a partner who challenged him intellectually and loved him unconditionally was much more valuable than any financial empire. Sometimes, the most improbable fairy tales are those that begin with a literal fall and end with two people choosing to fall for each other repeatedly for the rest of their lives.